Ladies and gentlemen, I see that the room is filling for the session of our annual conference entitled Universities as Places of Culture, Luxury or Necessity. I would like to welcome you all to our session. My name is Marcin Pałys. I'm professor at the University of Warsaw and a member of EUA board, and it's my great pleasure to chair this session today. Let me start from referring to the flagship document of EUA, Universities Without Walls, a Vision for 2030. It points out that universities are institutions that in their mission uniquely combine four elements: learning and teaching, research, innovation, and yes, culture. It is the first time that culture is so prominently present in our main policy document, and the importance of the universities in cultural landscape is emphasized with this. Certainly, there is no single definition of culture that is accepted by everyone. It is generally agreed that art, artistic creation, and artistic objects are part of the culture. Often, the discussion on culture on universities focuses on universities as places where artistic creation in different forms take place. But culture goes beyond art. In the broadest sense, culture is the entirety of the spiritual and material heritage of humans and society, or, with other words, the civilization. In such approach, universities as entire institutions are part of the culture. So there are many perspectives from which our leading question, necessity or luxury, can be approached, both in general considerations and in practical examples of actions. It's my pleasure to introduce panelists for this session. First panelist is Professor Andrea Bright. Her field of activities are media and film studies with a research focus in gender queer studies, gender research, and artistic research studies. She graduated from the Leopold Franzens University of Innsbruck and University of Newcastle, then stayed as postdoc in Germany, USA, and Canada. She held a guest professorship at Central European University in Budapest, and since 2004, she has been with the University of Vienna, Department for Theater, Film, and Media Studies. From 2011 till 2019, Professor Bright was Vice Rector for Art and Research at the Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna. Currently, she chairs the Board of Trustees of the Albertina Museum in Vienna and is the President of European League of the Institutes of the Arts. She recently published text entitled, "How Can Europe Arts School Act Politically?" The second panelist is Matthias Gruden. He is Director of Democratic Participation at the Council of Europe and oversees, among others, Council of Europe activities and programs in the area of education, including education for democratic citizenship, youth cooperation, culture and cultural heritage, landscape and biodiversity. The Directorate also includes the Platform for the Protection of Journalists, the Eurimages Film Fund, and the North-South Center for Global Interdependence and Solidarity. Matthias Gruden previously served as Director of Policy Planning and Deputy Director of the Private Office of the Secretary General and the Political Advisor to the Secretary General and President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Before that, he was a Brussels-based diplomat of the Slovenian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He holds a law degree from the University of Ljubljana, as well as postgraduate degree in European law from the College of Europe in Bruges, Belgium. And the third panelist is Marinus Ioannidis. Marinus Ioannidis is the director of the UNESCO Chair on Digital Cultural Heritage, the coordinator of the EU Horizon 2020 ERA Chair on Cultural Heritage with the name Mnemosyne, and the main responsible for the unique EU study on 3D digitization in cultural heritage. He completed his Master of Science and received PhD with honors in informatics at the University of Stuttgart, where he participated in several European and national research projects. His PhD thesis was focusing on the digital 3D reconstruction of objects, and his achievements are licensed to over 100 research institutions around the world. His lab at Cyprus University of Technology is the only entity financially independent from the university and the Cyprus government, and received more than 8.5 million euro in highly competitive European grants during the last 8 years. The main mission of his lab is to establish the first UNESCO UniTwin online master course in digital cultural heritage by 2023 and a regional center of excellence in digital cultural heritage by 2024. Welcome all the panelists, and thank you for participating in this session. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in the first part of this session, panelists will present their views on the topic of our session, and the rest of this 1-hour session will continue then in interactive mode. So it's my great pleasure to ask the panelists to have their opening speeches. The first will be Matthias Gruden, then Andrea Bright, and the Marinus Ioannidis. Matthias, floor is yours.
Good morning, Marcin. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. I think you are really trying to pack a lot into 1-hour session, so I'll just get straight into it. Two things. First of all, of course, when you're talking, you mentioned that yourself. When we are using the word culture, it has different meanings. It can be either a synonym for art, or it can be understood more broadly as the way we behave and the set of rules that guide our behavior within a group or community. Both are relevant, of course, to the subject that we'll be discussing. I'll focus, because of time, more on the second, because, of course, it's also even closer to the Council of Europe mandate. And the second one, that you see that I'm the odd one out in that panel, not coming from the university environment. So I'll give myself freedom to zoom a little bit out from that question and try to approach it, the relationship between knowledge, science, and art in both sense that have been, our culture in both sense that have been described, which of course it's not a new question. I mean, knowledge and art have been going hand in hand, have been enjoying a dynamic, predominantly symbiotic relationship since the start of humanity. I mean, and from the ancient Greece, Egypt, Rome to the Renaissance. In Da Vinci, they say, had an artistic approach to science, scientific approach to art. And of course, the Enlightenment, also to which we can trace the origins of our model of society, liberal democracy based on individual freedoms, human rights, possibility to freely elect our leaders, and being protected by a system of laws against the arbitrary acts of the power. So that has always been there. Now, but it doesn't mean we should not ask ourselves that question again. And there are two things in the contemporary society in Europe and elsewhere that I think are important in this respect. The first one is the ever accelerating development of technology and the role of technology that is taking in our societies, which in some way creates a tendency to look at science, at knowledge, in a very more and more narrow way, very utilitarian, very technical, technological, technocratic, you name it. Some would say exaggeratedly, of course, that we are creating a society of tomorrow that will be run by engineers and lawyers. But lawyers you can probably replace. And in the Council, we're addressing that, trying to address that, looking at relationship between art in the narrow sense and technology, artificial intelligence in particular, looking at art as means to bring in, reinforce social intelligence and social self-confidence that help us to deal with the technological development in the best possible way, and fully benefit from all the progress it can make, but also deal with some of the challenges that it brings about. And the second development is the fact that we see more and more an attempt to undermine the confidence in knowledge, in science, in facts, or even rationality, replacing them with myths and emotional narratives that are often created and manipulated by illiberal authoritarian populism. And just to add on this also, just initiative that we're putting in place, and it's going to be launched on the 6th of May. It's going to be a digital online exhibition that named Free to Create, Create to be Free. It will be launched in Norway, but it will be accessible from everywhere. And I would just like to invite everybody who's interested, because it's, I think, an opportunity for all the universities to take part and make that online access to online exhibition available to their students. So these two issues are bringing us to that question of that relationship. For the Council of Europe, of course, the focus is on the democratic culture, or culture of democracy, if you want. It's the and our flagship project in this sense is the reference framework of competencies for democratic citizenship. It's a set of 20 competencies divided in 4 groups: values, attitudes, skills, and the 4th one is knowledge and critical understanding, that we should try to pass on our students at all ages, in order to allow them to have that competence to be active, engaged, critical citizens. And as I said, all ages, including the higher education, we've been working on in that area to develop the framework also for the higher education, because higher education is simply a key to democracy, because higher education delivers the research results on which we must base the most important decisions in our society. It also develops the competencies we'll need to make our societies both democratic and sustainable. Because facts, of course, can be interpreted in different ways, but complex societies simply cannot be built on false narratives, on fake news, on disregard for facts. I don't want to go on too long. I'll stop here. There's a couple of things we would be suggesting we could do together with university in order to take this thing forward, but I guess there will be opportunity later on. So thank you very much.
Yes, there will be. Thank you. Thank you very much, Matthias. Now the word is going to Andrea Bright. Professor Bright, floor is yours.
So now, hello everybody, and thank you for the invitation. I am going to speak on the dimension of art in a very specific way. So for the discussion, we can also maybe distinguish or differentiate more closely between art and culture, or the role that art plays within culture. So the title of my little input, and I will post it in the chat, is this: artistic interventions keep us safe and sound, or art is ubiquitous at all universities. So coming from me as president of the European Association for Art Universities, ELIA, my thesis statement will not surprise you. Art is ubiquitous at all universities, and it is always and everywhere present. Let me use the next 5 minutes to explain in 3 points why I think that is so. First, in the approximately 800 art universities across Europe, all teaching, all research, all learning is dedicated to the production of art. At the moment, there are about 800,000 students in Europe studying art at these universities, And for them, as for their professors and all staff, art is neither a luxury nor a necessity. It is the daily bread. It is what they do. The impact of this work is considerable. Whenever you look at a contemporary artwork in an exhibition, listen to music during a concert, watch a play or a theater, or admire a sculpture in public space, the chances are about 95% that what you are perceiving is the work of an alumnus or alumna of an art university. So the next time you watch the famous New Year concert by the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, be aware that you watch 120 university professors perform. Most of the orchestra's musicians teach at the Vienna University for Music and Performing Arts, by the way, the only Austrian university occupying the first place in all university rankings. Second, science and research of all disciplines and at all universities happens engulfed by art. As scholars, we inhabit built spaces, our university buildings, that have been conceived of sometimes many, many years ago, but sometimes also quite out of a very contemporary moment, by architects, by designers, by painters, decorators, in short, by artists. University life in all its entirety takes place in these buildings and built environments, and it thus shapes all dimensions of our beings as inhabitants of scholarly work, of thought, of teaching, of learning. The way we walk through university buildings, through lecture halls, labs, studios, festivals, is a determining factor in the way hierarchies in university life and scholarly thought are built. The built environment is responsible for access and exclusion in a physical way, but also in a symbolic, representative way. Buildings are often given names of founders, sponsors, icons, and thus represent certain traditions, and certain traditions not. Too often, we are so used to these built environments that we do not make ourselves aware of them and forget to realize that the functionality of these environments has always also an aesthetic dimension. Ever since the Bauhaus movement, we know that form and function are intrinsically linked. So when you will be allowed to leave the home office again and you go into your university office, please look at the hallways, doors, walls and colors and furnitures and so on from an aesthetic point of view, and how the aesthetics of the things make a difference. Third dimension of the ubiquity of art at universities. Art, especially fine art, has the unique capability to make us understand complex connections within one glimpse. One image can change the way we look at things. One intervention can make us realize what is what. In this way, art keeps us safe and sound. Artistic intervention enables an immediate reaction, which may start a process of reflection, as opposed, if you like, to scholarly work, which makes us understand and reflect through different argumentative and discursive ways. Let me quote one example of this potential of artistic intervention taking place at a research university. So I will share a picture. For decades, the arcade hall of the University of Vienna has been criticized for its representation of 161 male scholars in the form of busts on sockets. In between all these male busts, only one woman is honored, Marie von Ebner-Eschenbach, on a plaque on the wall. The second female presence in this architectural ensemble is taken up in the shape of a muse decorating a fountain in the center of the court. So when in 2009, in preparation of the 650th founding anniversary of the University of Vienna, artists were invited to conceive of an artistic intervention, Austrian fine artist Iris Andraschek won the competition with her project, The Muse Has Had It, Der Muse reicht's. As an attachment to the sculpture of the Muse in the courtyard, Andrašek built an enormous shadow out of granite in anthracite color of a woman in fighting position, fist raised and headed laid into the stone floor of the courtyard. The shape was cut out of the stone floor and the shadow was laid into drainage concrete. Andrašek, the artist, built the 28-meter-long shadow inspired by a picture series she took of women scholars of the University of Vienna posing on a socket in the courtyard. In addition to the shadow of the Muse, the artist built 2 sockets, one bearing a concept sentence for the project and the other resulting from a call of proposals circulating among students and scholars of the university. The artwork is important and gives testimony to a critique of the lacking representation of female scientists and scholars in the Hall of Fame of the University in Vienna. But even more important were the discussions that preceded and followed the project, enabling the university members to raise consciousness about the built environment they live and work in. Art and culture in this particular case was no luxury to the University of Vienna. The artistic intervention was desperately needed as part of a discourse of historical memory and contemporary thought, of not only theoretically and historically reflecting and criticizing the symbolic policy of the representative space, but also to change it. Coming to an end, the ubiquity of art at universities needs to be reflected in all the frameworks for universities, the funding programs, the national budgets, the legislative frameworks. Artistic research, for example, needs to become part of the Frascati Manual's list of disciplines, so that the science statistics can account for the now 30-year-long tradition of research with artistic means, a demand that has been raised by the Vienna Declaration of 2020, published by all stakeholder networks of the higher arts education sector. By this, we will acknowledge that art in the tertiary education sector is neither a necessity nor a luxury, but a given. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much for this insight. And now we are going to the third speaker, Marinus Ioannidis. Marinus, floor is yours.
Kalimera from Limassol, Cyprus, Europe. I will try in my 5 minutes talk to bring everything together because I am also the last one speaker. And I will go 2,500 years ago because we have to do with the past. The time when words like democracy, like pandemic, were invented in the ancient Greece, the time of the Greek mythology, when the Greeks wanted to preserve their memory for the generations to come. They created a goddess who had 9 beautiful, nice ladies. Those 10 ladies had a special key landmark place where the ancient Greeks went to preserve or to wish to express themselves to the 10 ladies to keep their memory alive. The mother names was Mnemosini, and the 9 ladies were the muses, and the place, the temple, was museum. And by taking that into account and seeing where we are today with the current pandemic, with closed museums, closed universities, closed galleries, libraries, archives, the spaces where the universities get their knowledge or acquire their knowledge to find new ways to move to the future. We are trying to find our way by digitizing the past, trying to learn from the big data, from the story of the past, from the lessons that we experienced in the hundreds of years, especially here on our continent, in such a way to improve the future. Maja mentioned new technologies, artificial intelligence, but also immersive technologies, XR technologies, to be used to travel in the past, to travel through our spaces of knowledge, our museums, to do what? To relax on the sofas at home? No, to experience, to get the lesson, to learn from the past, and try to make not only the current situation, because as I mentioned earlier, the Greeks, the time when democracy was invented, faced the so-called Black of Athens. And imagine 20%, according to the estimations, on that time of the population of the state of Athens passed away. So can you imagine what it was on that time? What can we learn out of that so that we can improve the current situation today? So modern technologies, or the current revolution that we face in ICT, if we take it into account, and with all this big data available from the past, to make it available for us now and improve the current situation in whatever sense, even to understand what real culture is from the time of the 9 ladies, the 9 muses. That was each one of them for a certain area. Terpsichore for dance, Efterpi for music, for example, but also to go beyond of that and see what we can do in a better way to improve even our educational system and the life. That's for the moment from my side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marinus. We have heard the words of panelists, but actually we are also interested in hearing the voice of the participants of this session. To know something more about your views, we have prepared 2 polls to ask you questions about the art, about the culture, about the universities. And we would like to have then short comments from each of our panelists. But first, I would like us to ask organizers to show the first poll and invite everyone in the audience to answer the poll. Okay, I see that we have over 100 answers. So if you have not yet participated in the poll, please do this so that we have the nice overview of the answers. Okay, I see that there is not much more new answers coming, so I would like to ask organizers to close the poll. And we have had these questions about the role of the art and culture in the official documents for the universities. I would like to ask the panelists to have a very short reaction to what you have seen in the poll. How would you comment on this? Maybe we can start in the other direction. So first, Marinus, how could you comment on this? You can see the results in the chat.
Yes, yes. It is indeed important to see that 1/3, for example, or even half of the participants or of the answers coming to the first two statements, that it is addressing institutional missions, but also that there is a strategy in place. But let's take it in the other way around. We're on a time period where we are now, and we are moving, or we are facing the challenges, the current challenges and the future challenges of the next decade. And when our institutions are closed, nobody's here. Everything is on a remote base. Where we are with the culture, there is a culture. And the culture, it's now on a place to learn how to improve. And that's where we are as Europe, not only to improve this momentum, but also to see how institutions, not only alone, but also on a local, regional, and international level, can collaborate and improve that issue. Institutions like the Council of Europe, not only the European University Associations are challenged to take a position and be actively involved here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Andrea, how could you comment? We have, because of the time limitation, we have to be very brief on the commenting. Andrea, please.
Yeah, I mean, to have culture in a broad sense included in strategic papers of a university, I don't know, doesn't mean much, I think, right? I mean, if you define really culture in a very broad sense, then it's obvious that culture is everywhere, that there is no, no place where people come together that is not defined by the way they communicate, for example. And as soon as you acknowledge a form of communication, it's an act that is culturally shaped in many ways, for example, by our differences, by our similarities, where we come from, and so on. So everywhere where people and also maybe non-human animals meet, culture is always there. But maybe I can already address one question in the question section, if you allow me, that fits to that.
Well, Andrea, I think it would be better if we could have answers to the question later on. Yeah, okay. Matthias, what is your comment in 1 minute?
30 seconds. I think that, well, the question was about the culture in the broadest sense. And I already explained what that means in the Council of Europe context. When we're talking about the culture in broadest sense, we're talking about democratic culture for democracy. And within that paradigm of democratic culture, of course, there are two things that are essential, and that is academic freedom and institutional autonomy. You cannot have academic freedom and institutional autonomy without a democratic culture and a culture for democracy, and vice versa. So, I would really think, hope, and expect that these objectives would be clearly anchored in all the not only university strategies and papers, but also constitutionally protected and respected in all the countries of the universities participating, which is not always the case.
Okay, thank you. And if we look at the numbers of the poll, it seems that in the 3/4 of the answers, the universities have documents that state the role of the culture in their working and their missions. And from the remaining 25%, it might be that there are also statements, although the participants have no clear reference to these documents. We will now go to the second poll, and now we would like to ask the audience and participants about the practical examples of what's going on the regular basis in your institution as far as the cultural events and the ways of exercising the culture are concerned. Please give your answers. Well, we will be finalizing the poll shortly, so if you have not yet answered, please do so. And now I would like to ask to finish the poll and put the results to the chat. Well, it is, we have got the answers from the participants of this session from different universities and different institutions. And now I would like to switch to the short exchange between the panelists with that would be focused on two questions that are also in the list of questions that is gathered from and is growing from our participants. And I would like to ask two topics and ask you for your reactions. What universities could do to integrate cultural values in the curricula of the studies and in the subjects that do not deal directly with the art, which are, for example, related to the science, and how could we, in practical sense, make the connection between the artist and scientist. And the second topic, in the society, there are common cultural sets, but they are differently interpreted by different groups or different societies, and this is still changing with the developments of the society, politics, science, etc. What actions university could or should take to be places for free discussion on culture, tradition, identity, societal changes? Could you please react to and comment on this? Who would like to start first commenting from the panelists? Okay, Matthias,
I mean, somebody has to, but I mean, you're throwing a lot towards us, asking us to respond briefly on very complex issues. So really, telegraphically, on what the universities can do more to integrate culture and cultural values, democratic values. I already mentioned the Council of Europe reference framework of competencies for democratic citizenship. I think that's one good start or continuation to do that. I won't go into more detail, but of course, all this is available. Second is, in the Council of Europe, we're also starting to focus on the local democratic mission of higher education. Of course, it's perfectly legitimate and normal that every university wants to be a global world-class, and I think we should all strive and support that. But also every university is geographically somewhere. It's located somewhere in a specific community with challenges and opportunities. And I think that universities also need to contribute to the development of those communities, not only to their economic development, but also to their social and democratic development. So that's something that we're developing, and I'm very pleased that the EUA is interested in joining our platform that will advocate for the local democratic mission of higher education. My last thought, talking about the universities as places where art and culture are presented and performed. I think it's extremely important to preserve and develop that space for art now in a narrow sense. Also because, as I said, populism is also trying to reframe and redefine what the culture and art is. Trying to instrumentalize, almost weaponize the notion of culture, identity, art into something that is used to divide and polarize. And I think universities are among those that should, resist those kind of approaches and provide space and opportunity for art to be what it really is, a source of creativity, innovation, freedom, comment, criticism, everything. I think that we should be, we need in a democratic society.
Thank you. Andrea, you wanted already to react to some questions that are posed in connection with the polls and
yeah, and also leading on from what Matthias just said, I think 2 points how universities can become places where art takes place and where artists and scientists meet. One is, I think, whenever you exhibit art, be it in the form of having music at your ceremonies, for example, try and integrate contemporary art. Not use art in a kind of entertainment. When you listen to traditional pieces, when you but try to engage with what's composed, for example, in the here and now, because I think that opens up a window to a kind of deeper engagement. And second, how to connect artists and scientists, and also there's also one question by Alison, how universities that do not have a focus on art can kind of integrate that. I think, and this is why I also quoted this example from the University of Vienna. This is a great way, to invite artists to engage with something that's happening in your university culture, be it the architecture, be it the traditions, be it your curriculums, but kind of invite artists to make a dialogue and then kind of a discourse that is, a discourse of culture, but also a discourse about art and about what art can potentially point at, can evolve. And I think this is the way. I'm not sure if I don't know, a curriculum of theoretical mathematics should and can include I don't know, artistic dimensions. But if you invite an artist, to the curriculum and to the classroom and to the institution, and many artists might also deal, for example, in their engagement with artistic research, with mathematical traditions, then I think a dialogue can evolve.
Thank you. Marinus, would you like to add something?
Very nice conclusion from Andrea. But I can also ask, can someone in a modern university erase Plato, Andrea, for example, or Socrates, or Aristotle, those philosophers, but at the same time, those who invented part of the mathematics? This is what we have today. This is what we used to go to Mars. Yeah? Can medicine forget or erase Hippocrates? That's not possible. So this, let's say, start with the very simple polygon, the triangle. The education, yes, the culture, and the science. To focus, moving to the center, there where identity is, by taking into account the value of democracy. Democracy was developed by all those people. Just think on Socrates, for example. Yeah? And Socrates and his contribution also to religion, yeah? And all this what we are discussing today. My personal opinion is that we need to have a look in the past and reboot during this time where we learn in the virtual culture that we are experiencing what it was some time ago, so that we can, even that what it is under the word democracy, or value of democracy. We are using the word without any meaning today. And this on an international level. See how many countries have the word. That's the XYZ democracy. Yeah? But it doesn't exist a democracy in that country. What can we do as institutions responsible to educate, to train, to skill, or at least to bring the next generations of people, of scientists to that level, to even make the democracy much better to run and be in place? And for us, at least, to be proud when we see them, huh? Because when we are out of business, they will be in charge to govern. And we are a part of that. And we are also responsible, yeah? Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's indeed the good question. Yes?
Could I read that directly, because
yes, please, very, very shortly, because I would like to then switch.
Just this tension about antiquity and contemporaneous. I think it's the other way around. I mean, if you look at contemporary art, this is impossible without looking at the past. And I think contemporary art always, as art always is so self-reflective, contains the heritage, contains the past, contains the roots from where it's coming from. So I think the potential for democracy and a democratic culture is that art usually challenges, also in countries where there is a freedom of speech and a freedom of art, but still also there always challenges the democracy, the political frameworks, in a way that it always raises questions that are often not comfortable. So even this project that I showed you, right? Even this, you could say, it's very aesthetic, it's very nice. I mean, even this raised a lot of very uncomfortable questions that challenged, an institution that would always say, well, University of Vienna, we are completely democratic and free, and everybody can say what they want. But so I think there is an interconnection there.
Thank you, Andrea. I would like to ask you the question that came from the audience, and is quite a practical one, and I'm interested in how would you comment on this. This is the question by David Matthews, and it is: are we having this debate because culture, however defined, is becoming a greater part of university's mission, or because it's being squeezed out by other priorities? Who would like to comment or to give the answer to this? As this is the question that many of people at the universities are coping with. Maybe I can ask Andrea again to have the comment, and then Marinus.
Well, first of all, I think there is a pressure at towards universities to become more aware of their role as cultural players. As cultural players within a city, within urban development, within a sustainable development of the society of a city. So I think that this is partly also the reason why we are sitting here today. Third mission, universities taking the responsibility for their impact on society. So that's all things that you could subsumize under the notion of culture. And yet maybe in where I'm coming from, also in the connection with art, I think often it is difficult for universities, for non-art universities, how to incorporate and how to deal with it.
Okay, Marinus, would you like to comment on this as well?
Yes, I see personally, but also here at our university, I see that culture and education are together. You cannot separate them together. It's a part of our democracy in education. It's out of any kind of imagination that you can have a tertiary educational institution without the art and the culture in place. Nevertheless, we are facing great challenges at the moment. And that's not only the technology, the revolution in technology, it's also the pandemic. And where we are in front of a situation where we were never before. It's not in the educational book. It's not in a syllabi or in a curricula where we can go and, get the knowledge and come back to teach and train the young students. So the reason why we have this discussion, it's exactly that. And each time when we are driving with the car and we don't know where we are now, we are just asking the navigation, the GPS, just to improve and correct us. They give us a better path to come sooner, but in a better way to our destination, and safe, of course. So the discussion, I think, for today is how these coexistent elements can be in such a way in place so that the next generation can learn, can, let's say, do it better as we do it at the moment.
Thank you, Marinus. Now I would like to ask the question from the audience that is directed towards specifically Matthias Gruden. It's the question from Egmen Yilgier. Is it realistic to hope from universities in countries governed by populist governments to contribute to the development of critical understanding? Do you think European institutions has an applicable strategy for the dilemma faced by such universities in Europe? And I'm afraid it will be the last question and the last answer in this session. Matthias.
It's a very pertinent and very difficult question. You cannot separate universities from the environment in which they operate. First of all, because of the fact that for their functioning, for fulfilling their mission, they require what we mentioned before, institutional autonomy, academic freedom. And we know that this is being denied to a number of the in a number of countries, that there are difficulties, serious difficulties when it comes to exactly these points, which are not only important for the functioning of the universities, but are one of the fundamental preconditions for the normal functioning of democracy. Which brings us back to the whole circle, is that you will not be, of course, able to resolve these issues without resolving that fundamental issue of the functioning of democracy in certain parts of Europe and the world, where I think we can see realistically that something that we can only describe as backsliding from what the expectations and hopes were some time ago. But I would just also like to conclude to say that, this being said, I think there's an enormous admiration that, and that is also the role for the European institutions, certainly, but the European institutions together with their member states. European institutions, be it in Brussels or in Strasbourg, are as strong and can be as influential and as helpful as the entirety of those member states which are committed to their values are going to make them in dealing with this kind of situations. So I think that's very important. Let's not wait for a sort of help from the outside that's going to come somewhere and sort out things and force people into things they otherwise wouldn't want to do. So that's a very important thing. And I just want to say that with all this, I just would like to express enormous admiration and support and solidarity for so many of the academics, people working in the university, making the university, that even in the very difficult situations are being faithful and truthful to their profession. And I think they really require and deserve not only our respect, but also our support.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have limited time for this session, and this time is coming to the end. There are many questions that still are not asked, and many answers we would like to have. It was a big pleasure to have you here. I thank you very much, the panelists, for the participation in this session and their insights in the topic. I think that we know now that art is ubiquitous, as Andrea said, in universities, and we have to just see it. We know the values of the universities and connecting it to the art and culture for the democratic society. And we know that we heard that technology can bring us closer to the art, not only contemporary art, but also the art from the past. So I would like to thank once more very much the panelists. I would like to thank the audience and everyone who participated in this session.